Let's now talk more on that with William Mallinson, a former British diplomat and professor at the Greek State University. He joins us now live from Athens. Mr. Mallinson, welcome to RT. Very nice to see you here. So the EU wants to diversify its energy resources away from Russia. Obviously, we remember that Russia is the EU's main gas supplier. Does it mean that Brussels is planning to for a long-term standoff, I should say, against Moscow?
Under pressure from the United States of America, a lot of the Europeans are having to toe the American NATO line at the moment. There's a great deal of hot air, because the reality is that once one starts this enormous technical cooperation of gas deliveries, you can't just stop it overnight. It would probably take about 20 years, by which time a lot of other things have happened. The second point is that there is a disagreement behind the scenes between countries like Bulgaria and even Germany about how far these sanctions should go. Because a lot of the important economic sectors in some European countries actually are beginning to depend, especially in the energy sector, on their cooperation with Russia. So I think it's more a question of hurt political egos because of the complete success of what Russia has done.
And Europe continues to threaten Russia with more and severe sanctions, not just against individuals, but against its economy. What do you make of that threat?
It's, again, it's pure hot air. It's going back to Cold War rhetoric. The threats are surprisingly unspecific, actually. I know that a lot of large companies do not agree with these threats, including Boeing, for example, the United States, including Chevron. So again, it's sheer hot air. Let me say also that when Catherine the Great led a blockade against Britain in the end of the 18th century, this helped Britain very much to become more self-sufficient and introduce the Industrial Revolution. So even if they were to exaggerate and try to cut off as much economic cooperation as possible, that in the long run, not the immediate term, would probably help Russia to become even more independent economically than it already is. Not to mention the BRICS and the possibility of Russia increasing its economic cooperation with those countries, Brazil, India, etc. So again, there's a lot of political hot air in this. Behind the scenes, things are very different, particularly with Germany, which is probably in the most sensitive position of all, and is having to make sort of bland statements going along with what the Americans want, but is probably negotiating diplomatically with the Russians. Behind the scenes, I stress.
Right. By the way, as we speak now, the leader of Ukraine's radical right sector group has applied to run for the presidency. Do you think this is the reason to be concerned?
I do not see how he can possibly win such an election unless it is completely engineered a la South American Banana Republic by the Americans. I just don't see it happening. There'll be a lot of terror again. I think it will upset the very nice Jewish community very much indeed as well. And, there'll be a huge amount of opposition to that. So I just don't see it happening. I think, again, it's just hot air extremism. The sad thing about this is that such people have so far been supported by the United States of America and to a lesser extent by the Europeans, although the Europeans are a bit embarrassed about it. And I don't think they've yet formulated a serious policy about these extremist parties. Because if they were doing the things in their countries that they're doing in Ukraine, they would not be allowed to exist in these European countries. So there's enormous hypocrisy, enormous hypocrisy.
William Mallinson, former British diplomat, professor at the Greek State University. And Mr. Mallinson, thank you very much indeed for sharing your views with us. We appreciate it.